What was it really like testing two new markets on the hottest weekend of the year? Oh boy. Hi everyone, good morning. It is Saturday morning and I am kicking off a busy market weekend. I have two markets this weekend. I've just arrived in Raleigh, North Carolina to do the Triangle Pop-Ups Ironworks market today. And then tomorrow I'm going to be doing Pop-Up in the Pines market in Southern Pines, North Carolina. So it is going to be a busy weekend and it is hot, like no joke. Hot. Both days it's going to be in the low 90s. And then if you're new here, hello, my name is Jody. I'm the owner of Maison Camellia, a small batch textile studio located in South Carolina, and I am excited to take you guys along on this scorching weekend. All right, this is going to be my first check-in. It is 11:30, so the market has been open for about 30 minutes, and there were a few people starting to walk around. I haven't had any sales yet, but I've had a few people into my booth who have picked up business cards, so we will see. It is really, really hot. You can see that I've got a towel on the back of my neck with some ice in it. So I will check in later and I'm going to give you a quick tour of the booth. All right, just doing another check-in. It is around 1 p.m. and it is still scorching hot, you guys, and there are people here, but I imagine not as many people as there would be if it wasn't so hot today. But I have had 5 sales so far, and there's still, what is that, 1, 2, there's still 3 more hours of the market left. So yeah, we will see. And unfortunately, this is where the footage ends, because somewhere between the heat and the travel and the 2 back-to-back markets, I managed to convince myself that I was recording video at Pop-Up in the Pines on Sunday when I was actually just taking photos. So yeah, let's move on to the recap. So what was it really like testing 2 new markets in North Carolina this weekend on the hottest weekend of the year thus far? Oh boy, let's get into the recap. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this is my first time doing 2 markets in one weekend, and yeah, I decided to do them on, like I said, the hottest weekend with extreme heat advisory both days. And just let's get it out of the way, I would not do it again. I would not recommend it. 1 market, yeah. 2 markets, never, ever, ever again. So let's get into the overview. So on Saturday, I did Ironworks, which is hosted by Triangle Pop-Ups, and Ironworks is a mixed-use development, and it has shopping, yoga, I think there's some other type of gym there as well, restaurants. There's just a lot of stuff to do there, and I absolutely love that location. And a booth there is $165 for a 10 by 10 booth, and the market runs from 11 a.m. until 4 p.m. And I wasn't sure what to expect because I've watched some other YouTubers who have done that market, and I knew that load-in could be a little bit challenging, but I had no issues whatsoever, and I just love the size of this market. I think there were approximately 30 booths, if I'm not mistaken. So that is kind of the overview of that market. And then on Sunday, I did the Pop-Up in the Pines market in Southern Pines, North Carolina, and it is hosted at the Weymouth Center, which is just a beautiful, picturesque art center in Southern Pines, North Carolina. And for a 10 by 10 booth at that market, it was a little over $70. And it also ran from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. And for both of these markets, I was able to start setting up around 9 a.m. So let's get into the setup. And I hadn't initially planned to do 2 markets in a single weekend, but I decided to do this particular market because one of the biggest markets that I had planned, well, not one of the biggest market that I had planned to do in June, I was waitlisted. They had an overwhelming number of applicants. So because I didn't get into that market, my goal for this weekend was to make up some revenue for that large market. And what made these 2 markets work for me logistically is that my sister kind of lives halfway between them, because Raleigh is about a 2-hour drive from where I live, and Southern Pines is about 1 hour and 15 minutes in a slightly different direction. And because my sister lives kind of right in between the two, I was able to do the market in Raleigh on Saturday and then spend the night with my sister and then drive to Southern Pines and drive home. So logistically, that is why I decided to pull the trigger and go ahead and do these 2 markets. Now, and I'm laughing because looking back, I still can't believe I survived these 2 markets, you guys. Yeah, so the heat, the heat was extreme with these 2. So with the Triangle Pop-Ups Ironworks location, that market is on Asphalt, and the booths are set up in the development where you typically drive through to go to park, and they close off that section. So it's a pretty tight space, which I kind of really liked. The walkway space in between the row of booths was the narrowest and smallest of any market that I've done thus far, but I really liked it. It made it feel more cozy and more intimate. And I did decide to bring pretty much all the products that I have for this weekend. So I had my tote bags, I had both sizes of my boxy bags, all of my book sleeves, my bowls, my lavender sachets, bookmarks, all of it. I brought everything. And I went with my typical booth setup, which if you've seen some of my other videos, you're pretty familiar with the way that I set it up, where I kind of have my bags and pouches on one side, my book sleeves and sachets on the other side, and then I have my 4-foot table at the back where I have a few products as well as my checkout. So I did that setup for both markets, and as I said, it was much easier to load in to Ironworks than I thought it was going to be. They open up, they have it gated off until 9 a.m. I was there ridiculously early. I was there a few minutes after 8 because I was concerned about traffic and not getting there on time. So I got there super early. So I was literally, I think, the 3rd car in line who was able to go in. So that worked out beautifully. I was able to get everything unloaded and park. And yeah, so I was ready. Was I ready? I was pretty much ready to go by 11 a.m. when the market started. I think I might have still been putting out a few little price stands, but otherwise I was ready to go. And I decided for this weekend, don't ask me how my brain works. I know I just got my navy table covers, which I absolutely love, and I think they make my products pop. I love the contrast, but for these markets this weekend, I knew it was going to be so hot, and for whatever reason in my mind, I decided that I wanted to go back to my beige tablecloths for this weekend. I just felt like it would reduce the heat visually in my booth and make it possibly even feel cooler. At least I think I was, hoping wishfully the color of my table covers would somehow help with the actual temperature in the booth. But visually, I do think it helped to have the lighter table covers. And then I did the same exact product setup in Southern Pines at the Pop-Up in the Pines market. Huge difference though between that market. That market was on a large lawn area. And it was brutal on Saturday on the asphalt, you guys. And from Googling the difference, so the high on Saturday was 92 degrees. But when I Googled the heat that the asphalt holds and that radiates up from the asphalt, 92 degrees can feel upwards of 115, even up to like 120 degrees. So when I say it was brutal and it was hot, it was brutal and it was hot. I got overheated setting up my booth, and I don't think that I fully cooled down the entire day. And I came prepared for the heat. I had 2 half-gallon insulated double wall metal water bottles that I filled with ice and water that I had on hand. So I had plenty to drink throughout the day, plus the organizers of Triangle Pop-Ups. I'm going to give a personal shout out to Itzel. She was awesome. She was back and forth the entire day, and throughout the day she brought 3 cold bottles of water, so that was amazing. Thank you so much. And then I had also packed a little cooler that was full of ice where I brought a sandwich and some things to snack on. And then what really saved me is in that little cooler I also brought 2 washcloths that stayed nice and icy cold throughout the day, and several times pretty much there was enough ice that remained throughout the day that I could kind of roll up a couple of cubes of ice and put it on my neck, or putting it on my back felt really nice. I was even like laying it on my arms just trying to help me cool off. So if you are going to do a market that is outside in an extreme, there was a heat advisory, so if you have a market in weather like that, yeah, I highly recommend having enough water, having some ice and some cold cloths. And I'll talk about some other ideas of what I definitely want to do in the future if I ever decide to do a market in that heat, again at the end of this recap. But switching now to Pop Up in the Pines and the difference it made for that market to be on grass. So it was actually a little bit warmer on Sunday. It was 95 instead of 92 degrees, but just the difference of not having all of that heat. The ground and grass tends to stay cooler than asphalt, so there's not as much radiant heat that is coming up off of the ground. So it felt so much, I'm not going to say it did not feel cool, don't get me wrong, it was still exhaustingly hot, like miserably hot, but there was a noticeable difference between the grass and the asphalt. I think that's my main point right there. So and I was able to start setting up there as well around 9 a.m. and I did the same setup, which I think turned out really, really well. And yeah, so moving on to what people were drawn to. More and more, just in general, people are drawn to my book sleeves and my boxy bag. I did have my tote bags hanging up, and those attract people. And then I had my 2 shelves on the outside. With one side, I had my boxy bags and mini pouches, and then I had my Charleston collection pieces on the other side, and those continue to do a really great job of stopping people and getting people to come into my booth. I highly recommend having something like that, if you can, that sits outside of the booth, because I find it really does grab people's attention and invite them into the booth. Once they are in the booth, my book sleeves and my boxy bags still seem to be what people are drawn to most. And I got a lot of good feedback this weekend of how I've mentioned this before in some of my other videos, of how I've been displaying my boxy bags where they're folded completely open so that you can see the interior fabric, and that continues to be really, really effective, because people walk in and immediately, it's like before I started displaying them like that, I feel like people would hesitate a little bit and kind of be like, can I pick them up? Can I touch them? Not entirely sure, but when I display them open like that, immediately people touch them, they pick them up. So I just think it's a clear invitation to, feel free to pick them up without me actually having to just say that. So what sold? Before I get into what sold for both of these markets, I just want to go back to the fact that It was extreme heat. We were under a heat advisory for both days in both locations. So for both of these markets, the attendance was below normal. And I talked to several vendors at both markets who've done both of those markets before, and everyone who had that experience assured me that this was not the normal attendance or the normal turnout for both of these markets. And I honestly cannot blame anybody, because had I not been vending at either one of these markets, I would not have been outside doing anything on either of the days this weekend. I would have been indoors staying cool, and staying put inside inside the AC. So with that said, I just wanted to kind of preface what sold and how much I made at these markets with that, because the turnout was really, really low for both of these markets. But considering the fact that it was really low for these markets, kudos to the people who did come out and shop. Thank you so much, because it was a brutal day for sure. So on Saturday, and I'm looking over at my Shopify over here. So on Saturday at Ironworks, hosted by Triangle Pop-Ups, I had a total of 9 orders, and I sold 11 units in those 9 orders, and my average order value was $56.69, bringing my total revenue for the day a little over $500 at Triangle Pop-Up. And let's break down what I actually sold. So I sold 2 of my large Beauty Berry boxy bags. I sold 1 medium boxy bag. I sold 4 hardback book sleeves. So in terms of quantity, my hardback book sleeve was my best seller at that market. And then I sold a mini pouch and a matching strap. I sold another strap to someone on its own. And then I sold a single bookmark. So those were my total sales at Ironworks Triangle Pop-Ups. And then on Sunday, moving on to Pop-Up in the Pines, the turnout here was even less. The thing about Ironworks is it's at, like I said, it's a mixed use development. So people are there to eat lunch. People are coming to go to the gym or to go to Pilates or yoga, and they're already there. People live there, right? So there's people coming and going naturally throughout the day. But at my Pop-Up in the Pines market, this was more of a destination market. People had to really intentionally decide that they were coming to this market. So the turnout was not as great as it was for the Ironworks market on Saturday, which is reflected in my sales. So at Pop-Up in the Pines, I had a total of 5 orders for the entire day, and I sold a total of 10 units throughout the day. And my average order value was a little bit higher. My average order value was $60.35. And what did I sell? What were my individual sales? So I sold 4 of my Camellia Tea bookmarks. So in terms of quantity, that was my best seller at this market. I sold 1 medium boxy bag. I sold 1 of my large pouches. I sold 1 of my large fabric catch-all bowls. I sold 1 paperback book sleeve, 1 of my ruffle accent straps, and 1 mini pouch. So my total revenue for Sunday was $301.77, which brings my total revenue for the weekend was $811.95. So a very hot weekend and a lot of work. But even with all of it, you guys, I love both of these markets. I love the organizers. I definitely think that these are the right markets for my brand. I just think that the weather was working against everyone for these markets, because it really was, it was brutal. It was really, really, with the humidity and everything. It was tough to be outside. It was the type of weather that if you're outside, you are going to be completely wet with sweat. There's just no way to look cute or feel cute in that kind of excessive heat. So moving on to what surprised me. Yeah, I think just carrying on to what I was just saying, even despite the heat and the low attendance, I definitely want to do both of these markets again. Both of them have, so Raleigh Ironworks, there were a couple of musicians that performed throughout the day, and they were so good. And I just love the welcoming, cozy atmosphere that it created at that venue. And also I mentioned that the walkway between the booths, and I'll try to put a picture up when I'm describing this, is very narrow. It's the most narrow walkway between the booths of any market that I've done. So it really does make it feel a lot cozier, and it makes it feel more intimate. And I just love the vibe of that market. And like I said, I do think that it's a really good fit for my brand. I have applied to do that market again in the fall when the weather is nicer. So I'm looking forward to hopefully, and I've also applied to their holiday market. So hopefully I'll get into each one of those, and I can, come back and share what it's like doing this market another time of the year. And then the same for the pop-up in the Pines market. They also had a musician, and huge shout out to those musicians for performing and all day and singing in that heat. And you guys were so good. If I can find who was performing, I will put their social media handles down below, because they were fantastic. But it really did make the atmosphere and the vibe of these markets so nice. And the pop-up in the Pines market, not only do they have the musician, they also have a bar, and it's on a big lawn, like I said, at the art center. So people come and get a glass of wine, or I think they also had cocktails, and walk around and browse the market. So it really just was a beautiful vibe and a beautiful atmosphere despite the oppressive heat. What didn't land for either of these markets? Yeah, once again, the heat obviously had a huge effect on both the whole weekend and the attendance at the market. What else can I say about that? Yeah, I don't have very much else to say about that category. So let's move on to lessons learned. What did I learn from doing 2 new markets back to back on one of the hottest weekends of the year? First of all, I know I would not choose to do it again. Not to. I'm exhausted today. I did manage to unload the car, but I was wiped out yesterday. Physically, I just had nothing. I think I was just depleted from all of the sweating, even though I feel like I was prepared, and I had lots of water, and I stayed hydrated. I had added electrolytes to the water as well that I was drinking. I had plenty of snacks and food. It's just really physically demanding to be outside in that heat for 2 days, especially. I think it would have been different if it were like a single market where I left everything set up, right, and then just had to go back and do the market for a second day. But because it was 2 markets that had quite a bit of driving on Saturday, it was a 2-hour drive to get there. And then, I spent 2 hours setting up, and then, from 11 to 4 in the heat, and then breaking it down, which reminds me, oh my gosh, I almost forgot. So one of a fellow maker that I follow, I posted on Instagram that I was going to be at this market, and she messaged me and said that she would come and see me. And she is Irina. Her handle, I'll link it below, is Stitch and Story North Carolina by Irina. You were so nice. She came towards the end of the day and chatted and graciously stayed and helped me pack up my booth on Saturday. So thank you, thank you, thank you. It was so cool to meet you, and I truly feel like I have made a new maker friend. That's one of the things I love about doing these markets. And I also got to be a fangirl myself. Victoria at Renaissential, she is a maker as well. She has her own skincare line, and I actually learned of this market from her and then another maker in North Carolina as well. But Victoria was actually there vending on Saturday, and I didn't get to visit her booth, but she walked by and I called to her and she came and chatted and I got to meet her, and that was so cool. So I will link her information down below as well. Sorry I did not get to stop by your booth and check it out in person. Hopefully we will cross paths again and I will actually get to come smell and test all of your stuff. But still, it was so exciting to meet you. So I will link their information below. Please check out Stitch and Story. Her bags are gorgeous, and Renaissential, her bath and body products look amazing. And both of these ladies are just so super awesome and sweet in person. So back to lessons learned. I just wanted to throw that in there before I continue. So yeah, I would not do 2 markets like this in a weekend again. If I can help it, I don't know that I would do a market again when it's this hot, because it's miserable for the vendors who are doing the market, and also the turnout is just really low. What am I changing next time? I want to add to my heat kit. The only thing I feel like I was missing, because I think the water worked great, having the cooler and the ice and the washcloths worked really well, which I also forgot to mention. My phone kept overheating for most of the day, which is why you're not going to see, there was not a lot of footage from the markets. Number one, it's because I was just so exhausted. It took all of my energy, you guys, just to make it through the day and to check out the people that I checked out and to get the booth taken down. So I was just not feeling it to do a lot of recording. So I apologize for that. But also, I struggled with my camera and my phone at both markets overheating. I actually had to use the second washcloth that I brought. I had to keep it under my phone to keep my phone cooled down, because I did have a couple of times throughout the day where my Shopify did not even want to work on the phone because my phone was too hot and overheating, and the charger, it would just stop charging. So I want to look and see if there is some type of case or something that I can get for it that will help keep it cool. I don't know if that's a thing, but I'm going to look at it. And if any fellow vendors are watching who vend when it's extremely hot and you have any tips for keeping your devices cool, I would love to hear what you have found worked down in the comments. But I definitely feel like I need some circulation as well. So I do want to look at investing in a fan or 2 that I can have, so that at least there's a little bit of airflow. I think that would help a lot. Also, wardrobe. The second day I wore linen pants, and I was thinking they're linen and they're going to breathe and it's going to feel okay, because I don't like showing my legs, so I did not want to wear shorts. I didn't want to wear a dress for that reason as well. So I opted for linen pants, and those still were a huge they were a huge no-no. I ended up rolling the pants legs, the linen pants legs, pretty much all the way up to my knees, which I'm sure I looked a little bit ridiculous, but that's the only way I could get airflow. That's the only way I could get airflow to my legs. And I can laugh about it right now, because just thinking about how miserable I was throughout so many times on both of these days gives me the giggles. I don't know why. So, but yeah, I think I would dress a little bit cooler, and I want to make sure I have a fan, and just not doing 2 of these markets in one weekend again, if ever. Like I said, I still don't know that I would do another market if the temperature is going to be over 90 degrees. Well, I say that, but that's not true, because I have quite a few farmers market weekends planned for the summer. But the difference with those is they open, if you saw my city center market video where I don't have to set up. They have the tent, they have the table. I just have to bring my products, and they also open earlier and close earlier. So those markets, yes, I will definitely continue to do those markets in the heat. I'm talking about these type of markets where I do the full booth setup and breakdown, etc. How do I want to end this? So even with the heat and my revenue being less than I hoped for the weekend, still feel like both of these markets are a great fit for Maison Camellia and for my brand. I had hoped to do $1,500 to a couple $1,000s this weekend, and like I said, I ended up doing a little bit over $800, which, considering the weather and the people who brave it, I'm not upset by that. So if you've done markets in extreme heat like this and you have any tips that I didn't mention, drop them down below. I would love to hear your experience, and if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. All right, take care.